just after we moved to 5-1 on the season, I suppose I got to talk about this Matt Rhule going to Penn State crap. But first of all, I'm shocked that Penn State fired from James Franklin when they did. I can't think of a worse 3 weeks for any coach in the history of football. I mean, you're ranked in number 2 or number 1, top 5, and suddenly you lose the 2 worst games in a row that possibly anybody could have lost. I mean, I think they were favored by more than 20 points in both those games. It's terrible. And now we have to deal with the fallout because Matt Rhule's a Penn State guy. He played there. He's got a lot of family out there, from what I understand. And people are now kind of worried about Matt Rhule going to Penn State. So what are the chances? What do we think about this? Well, number one, I think the only thing, if you look at where would I go coach, I don't think it has really that much to do with the coach's salary. I realize that, people are like, well, throw money at him or just give him more money. Okay, well, after a while, what's the point of getting a shit ton more money when you can already do anything with your money you want? I'll give you an example. It's Minnesota. I live in Minnesota. It's getting cool. I'm getting old. Don't handle the winters as well as I used to. My wife and I talk about where else will we move if we were going to retire and move somewhere else. And she has one standing stipulation, and that is move to some place with an international airport so the flights are cheap and she can go see her kids wherever they live. Well, Matt Rhule doesn't have that problem. He can just walk out and get on a private jet because he has the money to do that. I don't. You probably don't either. So why would you go from, let's say, Nebraska to Penn State? I think or Curt Cignetti, why would he go from Indiana to Penn State? And I think there's only really one qualifying factor that I would look at, and that's NIL, the NIL money that you can have to buy players. Because if you're not aware of this, just in case, you have the House settlement came in for the first year this time, and the House settlement dictates that athletic departments, schools are going to start paying players, and it's a percentage based. Basically, for Nebraska and Big Ten schools, is about $20 million a year that now goes to players. Now, along with that, you still have NIL money that comes from the outside, comes from boosters and collectives and things like that. And that's where you can get your money, much more money to pay players and basically buy them to come to your program. So when you look at Nebraska versus, a lot of other schools, where do you think Nebraska ranks when compared to Penn State for NIL money? Because I think if you said we have more, I think you'd be wrong. So that's what I would look at if I were a head coach is, can I have enough money to buy the players that I want to play, that I want to buy? I think you see that in Nebraska's offensive line this year. We missed on some targets, probably because we couldn't pay them enough or as much as other schools. Is Penn State a better job than Nebraska? Yeah, I think so because of that. They have more NIL money than we do. And that's a big factor, and it's going to be a big factor from now on until maybe Congress passes something or something changes in the landscape legally to even out that playing field. I wouldn't count on that happening. Why would Penn State hire Matt Rhule? His record against ranked teams is worse than James Franklin's. It's horrifying. It's 2-22 or something like that. Now, granted, most of those, Matt Rhule's a guy that builds programs. We hired Matt Rhule to get the stink off our program. And he's kind of doing that. I don't think he's proven anything. He got us to a bowl game, big whoop. I don't think he's really proven anything this far. Could he prove stuff this year? Yeah, he could. He's in a good position. Nebraska's in a good position to do that. But his record against ranked teams is, if you're a Penn State alum and you said, oh, we fired James Franklin just to hire another James Franklin because they can't win big games, what would be the point of firing James Franklin in the first place? I really don't understand. I guess I understand why they fired him, but not right now. So if you're a Penn State guy and you look at Matt Rhule, what's the attraction other than he's a Penn State guy? He's an alum. It's his place. And again, I have to believe that you going, quote, home to coach, or you going to go coach for apparently the athletic director at Penn State is Matt Rhule's good friend. I have to believe that if you put yourself in those positions, going home, it's stupid. It's one of the dumbest mistakes you make in your life. Working for your friends, also kind of dumb. It's kind of like loaning relatives money. If you're going to give them money, that's fine. But if you're loaning them money, you're just putting yourself into a position for a harder life. And I hate to quote the Bible here, but you remember what Jesus Christ himself went back to his hometown, and they all were like, this is the little kid. This is the same guy. What's the line? A prophet is without honor in his hometown, or something like that. That alone should tell you to not go back to the place you were from to I don't know, business, to do things, anything. Just leave the good memories you had of that place in your head and move on in the rest of the world and do things. All right, what else we got with Matt Rhule going to Indiana or going to Penn State? Would Curt Cignetti go to Penn State? Again, there's the NIL thing. He's got it good at Indiana. We have a Slack that we communicate with my other writers, and I pointed out, he's caught lightning in a bottle at Indiana. The chances of him doing that again at Penn State are very low. But one of my other guys pointed out that Curt Cignetti is one wherever he's going, which is probably a damn good reason for Penn State to go after him. Who would Nebraska go after if Matt Rhule left? Well, James Franklin probably. It's probably a decent candidate. He's a good coach. He just, wore out his welcome. I think he's done pretty well too. I mean, his winning record is way the hell up here. I'm sure people, if you're like, well, maybe they could coach Nick Saban out of retirement. Come on, man. Be realistic. That's a different conversation. We won't get into that. Will Nebraska, here's the thing. One more thing. Well, probably, okay. Nebraska, or Matt Rhule has said everything he loves about Nebraska. His wife has a business in Lincoln. He's done, I love this place, all that stuff. That's the kind of things you say when you're a coach. And when somebody throws a bag at your money to go somewhere else, then you go somewhere else. It's a business decision. This isn't touchy-feely time. There is a certain life quality. I think Lincoln, Nebraska would be a beautiful place to live. I loved my time in Lincoln. Could I go back there? That's a different conversation. But again, don't get caught up in all the warm, fuzzy, I love this place kind of stuff, because it's noise. That's all it is. What matters is that Penn State probably could provide more NIL money than Nebraska ever will. I get the idea. There's a lot of you who think that whenever we need to get a player, or whenever, like an offensive lineman, or maybe like a left tackle, that we can just go out and just shit money to come up with this and buy these guys. Where do you think this money is coming from? I see this all over, social media, Twitter. I reference Twitter way too much, but people just have this idea that somebody that isn't them has a bathroom where they just literally walk in and, they just shit money in that bathroom, walk out, maybe wipe it off and go, hey, here's some money for your tackle. Nebraska doesn't have that. They don't have it to the same level as a lot of other schools. We don't have all money, I would love to see Matt Rhule stay at Nebraska. I think he's doing a good job. I like him as a coach at Nebraska. I think he's got a good coaching staff at Nebraska that he's assembled. And if he were to leave, we'd have to start all over, because God knows how many players would transfer, or he'd take with him, or coaches he'd take with him. And that would be really unfortunate, especially when we're all just, I hope, starting to feel good about Matt Rhule and the Nebraska program, where it's going and things like that. So that's my thoughts on Matt Rhule. It's Monday. Have a good week. Maybe I'll do a couple more of these this week. Minnesota Friday night. That's the thing. We should all be shitting ourselves about having lost to Minnesota God knows how many times in a row. And instead, we're shitting ourselves about Matt Rhule leaving for Penn State. It's always something. Go Big Red.